Question. Have you ever sat down to do your social media content and wonder why the heck you're even doing it? What outcome is it even getting you? You've put in all this work to clip your episodes into bite sized chunks. You've picked out the best quotes from your episode. You're posting multiple times a week, and yet you're getting very little engagement, not much follower growth, and you have no idea whether your social media is even doing anything to get you listeners for your podcast show. Does that sound like you at all? If it does, then I have good news. You are not alone. In fact, I know exactly what you're going through because this was happening to me when I was trying to grow my first podcast. All the social media experts were telling me that I just needed to be consistent, that I needed to tell my stories, that I needed to provide value. And I mean, they weren't wrong, but it still wasn't working, at least at the pace that I wanted it to. And so I started trying something completely different. And as a result of this completely new thing that the social media gurus don't tell you to do, I saw the listens on my podcast doubling, then tripling. And the more that I shared this secret with other top podcasters who had grown their own podcast to hundreds of thousands and or millions of downloads, I realized that I wasn't the only one who had stumbled upon this undisclosed secret formula. They had to. And in this podcast episode, I'm going to let you in on the secret and share with you exactly what it is you need to start doing on your social media to grow your podcast show. My name is Deidre Shen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Capshow and the Podcast to Profit Accelerator. And this is Grow My Podcast Show. Let's get into it. Hey, this is Deidre Shen. I am the CEO and co-founder of Capshow and the Podcast to Profit Accelerator, creator of content Honey Traps, and the author of Honey Trap Marketing. And in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you the undisclosed formula that the top 1% of podcasters are currently using on social media to grow their podcast show. But first, let me tell you how I stumbled upon this. And to do that, I'm going to take you back to 2013 when my husband and I started our very first business. It was called The Chockpot. It's a dessert bar based in Sydney. Now, I want to point out that we had no idea what it was that we were doing. We were pretty naive at the time. I mean, maybe we are still a little bit naive, but a little less naive right now. At the time, very, very naive. And we had built this business hoping that people would come. Right? That was how we built businesses back then. We would develop this really awesome product, know that it was the bee's knees of of desserts. And we just knew that surely we would open our doors and it would be pummeled down with all the people wanting access to it. Long story short, that didn't happen. They did not come. We spent months and months trying to figure out how to get people to actually find out about us. Now, at the time, we were pretty fortunate because there was this thing that had just popped up on everyone's radar called Instagram. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not up with it. I did not know what this thing called Instagram was. I hadn't even heard of it. But we had someone who was on the team who was a little bit younger than me. And she was like, hey, have you heard of this thing called Instagram? You've got to get on it. And I was like, I have not. I don't have the time to figure out another social media platform. Facebook is enough. So I don't know what to do. And she was like, look, it's super easy. She grabbed my phone. She set up a profile. I think the profile photo at the time was an incredibly bad one. It was of our very, very original chockpot dessert in brown. It was in a brown ramekin. Maybe we can put the photo of that in the show notes. But it was abysmal, I would say. And I was like, okay, cool. And I didn't do anything with it for a really, really long time. So we had a profile, but nothing. And then I started speaking to, at the time, food bloggers. So we were inviting food bloggers to come in, and they were coming in every now and then, and they started saying, "Oh, like I love the dessert. I love what you guys are doing. I'm going to post on Instagram." And I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. This thing called Instagram. I think we might have a profile on there. And so they did. And I started seeing, without doing very much at all, our followers grow. We were getting more and more followers. We were getting more and more people coming in saying that they had heard about us on Instagram. So we completely, at the time, we rode the wave of Instagram growth. Even with a really bad profile photo, with nothing in our bio almost, maybe we had our address in the bio, with almost no posts, very little engagement. Like, we were not doing anything on that platform. And yet we were growing. I saw all of the numbers increasing, every day, every week, followers were growing. When we did put a photo up and we had like really, really bad random photos, we put very little effort in, and yet it still got a lot of engagement, a lot of visibility, shares. And we had people coming in saying, hey, I saw you on Instagram and I want to order this thing. And they just point to their phone. I was like, wow, there's something in here. I didn't know what it was because I'm not a social media native, I guess. Like, that's not something that I generally know and know how to do, even today. I'm going to be completely honest. So everything was growing across the board. We were growing. We totally rode this wave, this Instagram wave. And then it all stopped. I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but it is incredibly hard to get any type of real visibility when you're just starting out on social media right now. It is really hard to accumulate genuine followers quickly. It is really hard to encourage genuine engagement quickly. We can see that, right? Algorithms change, new platforms emerge, platforms become saturated with more and more people and businesses trying to just spruik their message, and visibility across the board just plummets. That's just the world we live in right now. So I knew that I had to figure out something completely different, because posting and ghosting was just not a strategy that I could rely on any longer. I had to figure this thing called social media out. So how could I still maximize these powerful platforms that have billions of people on them to access my dreamiest clients and customers? How do we actually take control back into our own hands and no longer leave it to chance? Leave it to this hope and pray strategy that we can put content out there and just hope that our ideal clients see it. Well, I have the answer for you. It is not about paying for ads. I mean, that is a strategy, but that is not the strategy I'm talking about. Strategy that I'm talking about in this episode is a little thing that I call visibility growth hacking. And we are going to jump straight into it after this short ad break. Today, we're going to be talking about the Podcast to Profit Accelerator. Now, did you know the average podcast episode takes a high ticket coach a minimum of 12 hours to produce? What? 12 hours? That's insane. Minimum. Okay. Which, when you really think about it, in the amount of exertion and energy that goes into it, right? Mental, emotional, physical, you have to turn up. Yes. The 12 hours makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I start to calculate. That's true. And as you're saying that, I'm like, yeah. I'm even thinking about you preparing for this particular episode, right, Deidre? So now, when we first start podcasting for our business, it's just about kind of giving it a go, and it's absolutely a must. It's all about done is better than perfect. Let's put ourselves out there. But really, the question now, after you've been podcasting for a little while, is how do we get an ROI on these 12 hours, right? Which can very quickly turn into 120, 240, 360. Yeah, we do the maths. How do we make sure that these hours we're putting in is an investment that we actually get a return on, and not just time that we're wasting, just an expense that we're constantly racking up with no return? So this is a problem that we feel very passionate about solving. And really put every single high ticket coach out there and consultant who's currently podcasting, as a way to get leads for their business, because that's something that, that the space that we play in. And this is exactly what the Podcast to Profit Accelerator is all about helping you implement. So today we would like to invite you to learn about this exact strategy that we teach inside this course, but get that absolutely for free.
It is covered in this 5-part pod class.
Unheard of. For free? What?
You're like, wait, how do you think that for free? So we packaged it together as part of this 5-part pod class presented by Deidre. And what you'll get in it is basically the step-by-step details of this quite unconventional traffic strategy that we're currently using and our clients are using, that's producing multiple high-ticket clients each month. So the consistency is really important without, by the way, needing a really large social media following or, running paid ads. That's all just cream on top. And not only that, but once you register, you'll also get access to detailed show notes and resources that you're covering in the pod class as well. So trust me, you're going to find that you're going to listen to it multiple times. So we've got all that for you, but all you have to do to register is just head over to www.podcast2profitaccelerator.com. And lesson one will be automatically unlocked for you then and there. Just make sure that you register though. That's the only way that you can get access. It's just at www.podcast2profitaccelerator.com.
No brainer, you guys. This is a no brainer. What? Free? Oh, okay. Anyway, I don't know how much longer we're going to do that, but get in now. Get in now while you can. Okay. So how do we take it into our own hands to get in front of our ideal clients on social media? What are the top 1% of podcasters actually doing that no one tells you about? None of the social media gurus really talk about, right? They talk about just creating reels, maybe. They talk about looking at trending audio on TikTok. I don't know. They talk about all these things, but what is actually the key to having a sustainable strategy on social media to get in front of your ideal clients? I am joined by my co-founder, Bonarai. She is going to be jumping into this discussion with me and sharing some examples as well of how our team do it, because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't enjoy social media. So that's time that I don't want anymore. It's fun has been sucked out of it. Exactly. So the less time I can spend on it, the better. But this is why, for all of us smart podcasters, smart high-ticket coaches and consultants who podcast, I will teach you the strategy. This is what we're talking about. But, really what you should be thinking about is how can you quickly almost get it off your plate, right? That's what I did and do. And it's been incredibly successful for me. All right. So let's jump into visibility growth hacking. So visibility growth hacking is really just about what it says on the tin, right? How do you hack growth in your visibility?
Yes.
On social media. And the way that we've done this, so we've got kind of 3 steps that Bonnet will take you through, but it really is about ultimately knowing who your ideal client is and then going where they are. Now, it sounds stupidly simple, right? Like, I'm sure that you have probably heard some other people say this.
Yes.
But we're going to share with you the specifics around how we actually do it on social media.
Yes.
So the first step, Bonnie, and I want you to go into an example of this, but it is actually knowing who your ideal client is. Because, and again, stupidly simple, we struggled with this ourselves.
Oh, it was so hard. Yeah,
It's been so
but definitely not easy.
Exactly. And I think this is the thing. It's like, these are some of the foundations of marketing like this is things that we can so quickly skip across because we're like, oh yeah, I've heard it before again. I've heard it before. And so we're like, it doesn't apply to us or our business is different.
Yes.
But it's not.
Yeah, it's really
And we learned this the hard way. And actually, we will do a separate episode on this. I think that's worth doing a separate episode on.
We should step. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So important.
And actually, like the formula almost that we used to come up with our own niche, which is, oh my goodness, you put it in a test. This is a live pop quiz. The actual formula of who we know who works. Okay, good. So we focus on serving high ticket coaches and consultants who are currently podcasting as a way of getting leads for their business. So, how we kind of really kind of word that changes now and then, but essentially we had to really, really hone in on not just coaches or not just business owners, firstly, not just coaches, but people who focus on high ticket and not just people who are podcasting as a way of getting credibility. That's a lot of people, podcasts out there,
but then specifically toning in on people who are already looking to do it with a very express purpose to say, yep, this is almost my preferred way of communicating. I'm not a writer. I'm not a blogger. I like to talk. This is how my preferred way of influencing. And podcasting is something that I'm already, pretty passionate about doing as a way to then convert. So they're already thinking in your test of the funnel. So that's what we had to be really clear about as our favorite kind of, ideal person.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see that it's, it is definitely like everyone almost, when we first started, we were like, we can help all entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that serves no one.
That's right. That's right.
We found out that the hard way, by the way, you guys. So, if you are actually invested in, actually implementing the things that you hear about and you learn about on this podcast or any other podcast, and you hear something like that, so like, please take it from us, from people who have been there and done that, that this is an incredibly, incredibly important step that you cannot skip over. We tried and we got burned. So,
And I think really do it. The biggest lesson that I learned as well was because, we've done the marketing, as I say, and words like avatar coming up with avatar stuff can feel really like, oh, I know exactly who it is. Is this person, they have this many kids, and you can feel like you've done it, even if you're like, I'm not skipping over it. I've done it, but I know exactly who my ideal person is. I think it's really important to know them very well. And that's probably the part where I was like, yeah, and then you can do it intellectually. But really being specific by way of, an example would be, for example, some of the content that we're creating for your account, Deidre, like your organic account. When before with our previous podcasts and things like that, it would just be about the entrepreneur, the struggle that every CEO feels to manage their time. Now, I'm not saying that's not a relevant piece of content because yes, every CEO does struggle with the balance of like, how do they, allocate their time on family, all that kind of stuff, right? But when we start to niche down and kind of and not having enough energy in the day, right? So that could be like a funny TikTok or a reel. So that premise is good, but what makes it great is how can you speak specifically to, for example, a somewhat, ambivert CEO, right? Who's kind of they've got the ability to generate the energy that they know that their listeners need, and then actually be able to say, talk about the struggle of having, 6 different podcast episodes that they need to either record, whether they'll be interviewed or interviewing someone else, maintaining the energy and hopefully not collapsing in the heat by the end of the day, which I do all the time. So there you can see where it's like so much more niche down because you're speaking to a very specific problem that someone who's already got a podcast up and running, they're already used to guesting and interviewing other people. They're now struggling with the more specific pain point of like, how do you keep that energy going during the day versus someone who is getting into podcasting in general, So that's a very, basic example, if you will, of like the level of discipline you need to have around, okay, how do I speak specifically? Then you're actually able to create a very entertaining, engaging, and educational piece of content versus just like a very broad brush, CEO pain point solver sort of thing. So I think that's the level we need to think at.
Yeah, and actually we might deep dive a little bit more about this in our next episode. I think that would be a really good one because
Yes.
this is so important, and I do really want to spend a lot of time on this particular topic.
Yeah.
But not for today because today we're talking about visibility growth hacking. So you guys got a bit of an insight into how we think about content creation and why it's so important to be so specific. But there's a reason why it's really important to be specific, which is, well, ultimately you need to know where they're hanging out as well, right? Like, because once you know who they are, like again, when we were talking to all CEOs or all entrepreneurs, like they could be anywhere, right?
And they are.
They are
They
literally
are.
everywhere.
Yes.
Exactly. But when we can start to hone in on, okay, well, this is the specific entrepreneur or specific CEO that we are talking to, now we can be very much more targeted into knowing who they're hanging out with, where it is that they're hanging out, and go and be there.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And this one's a little bit of a scavenger hunt, if you will. So the reason we want to be really specific, and if I just kind of continue pulling the same thread that we had in the previous point about knowing who they are. So let's always go, who is almost similar to yourself, a CEO who's leading, multiple businesses potentially, and or a really, kind of the main one that's got their attention. There's a lot of energy going out. If you think about that person, but they're in their podcast and you're like, okay, where might this person be? And, as you say, when you think about it demographically, it doesn't really help.
Yeah.
But really, if you get behind sort of the psychographic elements of their profile, you're like, okay, so for example, platform wise, they should be on Instagram. They are on Instagram, probably begrudgingly so.
Yeah. Make use that.
Yeah. But they again, our target person is someone who knows that they need to be on there. Unfortunately, they don't love it, but they are on there. So they're already there. And then it's kind of thinking that. So an example, this is where I call it a scavenger hunt because there's no neat answer. Unfortunately, we can't give you a list of hashtags to say these hashtags you can find your ideal person here again.
Yeah.
But it's really about what are the online communities, right? What do they resonate with? So an example of something like this, which we're testing, could be someone like yourself, maybe, or our target customer here, maybe someone who follows an author like Susan Cain, right? Who really talks about, she writes and presents a lot about the topic of, the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking.
Yeah.
And so that would really, that's just one hypothesis though. So then it's kind of like going, okay, so then looking at like the type of people that are following her, the types of hashtags that, her kind of content is getting, and could this be somewhere that our person is? And yeah, like with everything, it's testing, but really it's about thinking more from that perspective rather than like here on Instagram on, I don't know, boss babe is, like that's the hashtag. I'm not going to about it. Exactly. Yeah. That's all the entrepreneurs. And unfortunately they are, and there's absolutely no way you can get cut through from that very basic perspective. So you do have to think quite critically. So that's one example of like, okay, what might be a thought leader that they follow? That's where they hang out really, because that's who's getting their mind share.
Yes.
Someone like, for example, at the same time, you also follow Russell Brunson, right? Not just on social media, but his teaching. So it's like, okay, could there be not all of Russell Brunson's people though?
No.
Is there a subset of, our people that follow certain parts of his content? Maybe they listen to his podcast, right? Maybe it's kind of like, maybe they're not like the ClickFunnels people, but so it's really a little bit of, trial and error, but it's really thinking deeply about who might these people be listening to. Yeah. And we want to be there as well, either contributing to the conversation and consuming it with them, and hopefully influencing them as well through that lens.
Exactly. And because that was kind of going to be the last point, which is, obviously we want to know who they are. We want to know, therefore, where it is that they hang out and who they hang out with, because then we want to be able to participate in those conversations with them.
Yes.
And this is really the most important part, because that I know that I have missed time and time again. And by the way, this is not a natural part for me. So I can say it. And this is one of those examples of like, do as I say, not as I do a lot of times, because I still struggle with this. Like, this is not an easy thing, but it's hard. You need to participate in those conversations with them and not just use social media as a promotion platform, which again, this was the trap that I fell into, right? I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just promote. I'll just give out my valuable content because surely all these people will somehow stumble across it and decide that they like what they're seeing from me and then convert. And that's just, you guys, that just does not work. Okay. Again, take it from us. That does not work because and look, to be fair, the reason why I fell into that trap very quickly was because that was kind of how it worked for my first business. Right. And that's why I'm very, very intentional to say I was fortunate to be able to ride that wave of growth. That's not here any longer.
No.
But even, and some people might be like, oh, well, maybe that's TikTok. It could be. Look, it could be. But again, we have to be intentional with who it is that we're actually trying to reach. Now, with a dessert bar, even though we had an idea of who our target customer was and who we were speaking to, that is more of something that is an everyday. Like we could, if we are on TikTok, but if we had been on TikTok, if we had started our business and we're on TikTok now, it would take off like that, right? Because obviously it's a very delectable looking product. And a lot of people on TikTok would be in our target customer range.
Yes.
When we have a coaching business and a consulting business, it becomes very different. So the thing is that, you might have videos that become viral. You might have videos that take off, but are they the right people that's actually consuming that? Yep, a portion of it might be cool, but I do not want us to fall into this trap of like just trying to go viral and lean on these vanity metrics because you think that that's again going to make your business. Like it's not.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're one of the lucky ones, and I put that in in better comments, maybe. But is that a strategy you want to be relying on? Like maybe the lucky ones, like maybe
winning the lottery. Yeah.
right? Like, let's be smart about this. Let's be smart about how we actually leverage social media. And being smart about it is obviously putting out good content. And we'll talk about that in our next episode about how to actually do that. That's talk specifically to your ideal client. But then we actually go to where it is that they are and we actually hang out with them. We actually participate in conversations with them. We're not just there to promote.
Yes.
And so what could that look like?
Yeah, I think I do want to pull on that point that you made about, sort of a trap that you fall into. And I think a lot of us do, where you say, promoting and especially sharing the value from your content feels like a give. And it is, but I think I want us to reframe it. That's actually like a taking, because you're asking them, like I say, you're just assuming that people will take that and be like, oh, this is amazing. Let me take all the steps with you.
Yes.
So we want to think about this process, last part of the process, to be like, how can we be more truly giving, which is meeting them where they are and engaging them with verbiage, with things that actually resonate with them. And this is an extra, step. Like when you say, like, it's not natural for us to do, and you said, I think for you to do, it may not be natural in that particular context, but when you think about offline, you do it all the time.
Yeah.
When you're genuinely interested in someone, for business with our friends, when we're sitting down to have a coffee with them, you're not kind of just like cursorily trying to speak to everyone in the room, right? So you're with that person, and that's the person you're having a coffee with, and you genuinely want to know how the day is going or whatever you're talking about.
You mean I don't just run around the room putting up a smiley face emoji so that everyone like, like go up to that person.
Let me switch on my emoji.
Yeah.
But it's just a different.
Yeah. Let me give you the party poppy emoji this time.
And the person's like, this is not the right, like, this is the, what? And you're like, oops, wrong emoji. Sorry, delete, and then here's a sad face emoji. That cry face emoji. And that's the analogy that I wanted to your point. But we get to that stage where we're kind of going for breath and just trying to just spray and pray, right? But we're like, no, we're very intentional about who we're talking to. We're going to invest the time. We know it takes 7 hours, all the kind of stuff, and just being really intentional and quality. That's when you can actually have a proper conversation. Now, does that mean it has to be really drawn out and long? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. But it is about going, okay, what is the, what can be genuine and honest? So you already know where they're hanging out, because who your person is. Again, you have a hypothesis where they're hanging out. It may not be your exact people straight away, but they're participating in the conversation is really about looking at what conversation's already happening and reading the room, even if it's the digital room. And, an example for one of our clients is that, obviously she's not just an entrepreneur, but a big part of her identity is being a really good mom. So some of her content, she's going to get, resonating with her ideal customer. It resonates with the fact that how does she be such a present mom with happily, running so many businesses, such large businesses. And she's really very intentional about the way that she communicates with them about, her kids, right? And then very specifically so. And you kind of think, well, what does that have to do with lead gen? But, again, people buy from people. So it's like they're already listening to your podcast, in this case, her podcast and her business tips. But now this particular part of her visibility growth hacking is being seen as this human who is so much more than that and can actually teach you to have a very successful business while also having a very quality home life.
Yes.
That's like what she does really well.
Yeah.
But it's through this process that new people who are new to her world, who may have just heard her talk very, professionally and stuff about her business, can see that side to her, because she's very intentional about that, those being her content pillars and her way of communicating as well. So I think it's really kind of, that's like one element where they, you're engaging on that. And then when you're sort of going out and, another part of it is also obviously, like we talked about, the thought leaders that they're following.
Yes.
Right. And it's not about being disingenuous and saying, I don't know who this person is. Let me just like blast them about how great I think, and hopefully my target customer sees it. But you generally do have to find that overlap, that Venn diagram. So if we decide to go and comment on Russell's stuff that, a lot of our ideal clients are seeing, we need to find an angle that really resonates, and because in your case, you are a really big fan of Russell and you've met him and you've followed his teachings and you've implemented them in such an incredible new way. Right. So you want to be engaging with his content from that angle. So that takes a little bit of extra effort, and there's a lot of detail. Maybe in the show notes, we can put in, kind of like what the latest podcast that you've done is, like how you leverage Russell's strategy. But really, so that would be really, really compelling for our target clients of high ticket coaches going, hang on a minute, I've not seen that example of Russell's teachings.
Yes.
Let me check this person out. Let me just see what her profile's about. Yeah. They may not follow straight away. They may not listen to podcasts straight away, but that's sort of
You're already on their radar.
exactly, because again, you're being yourself, you're being unique, but you're finding that you're hanging out where they are, which in this case, maybe on Russell's Instagram, maybe, right? So we have to think very, very, and this is why we'd rather take 5 of those actions than 50 of those random emojis on everyone's comment.
Exactly, exactly. And by the way, this isn't meant to be a strategy that you're going to be spending hours and hours of your time on. Literally, this is 15 to 30 minutes a day.
Yes.
All it takes, 15 to 30 minutes a day to be really intentional about who it is that you are going to start to have conversations with. And I don't mean, I mean, you could if you wanted to like DM them, if it makes sense, but I would not start there probably. I would actually just start with like trying to form a genuine connection with them.
Yes.
And hey, if it leads into the DMs, awesome.
Yeah.
And then you might be able to link them to a particular podcast episode that you have because it helps them. It's something that they're potentially struggling with, maybe. I don't know. But that is how the key of visibly growth hacking is really, as it says, to be visible, right? To get visible to them, to get on their radar so they come and check you out. They check out your awesome content that we're going to be talking about next week, next episode. And they check out your profile, they check out your link in bio, which is going to have your podcast. They then spend 7 hours with you because you've also content honey trapped them along the way. And then voila, you have a client who is wanting an ideal client who is wanting to give you their money. Okay, so I know that was like a really like quick overview. We will leave for you a cheat sheet with the 3 steps to visibility growth hacking so that you can kind of like peruse it at your leisure. So get that cheat sheet in the show notes. We'll leave that in the show notes. And also I do go into this particular strategy as part of the podcast. Yeah, so definitely just look, you have nothing to lose, right? It's free. So register for that. Go through the five lessons in the podcast. And yeah, like you're going to get so much out of it because I've pretty much condensed the most important parts of my own strategy into that podcast. So it's just one of the 3 secrets they're going to get. It's like a half of one of the secrets. Half of one. So it's like seriously, I know what I mean. Like we just did a whole episode on visibility growth hacking, and it's like half of one of the 3 secrets that I cover in the podcast. So she talks really fast on the podcast. Yes, I really do. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. If you love this episode, please leave us a review. It will mean a lot to us. Leave us a rating. Follow us, share this with all of your friends, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.